Welcome to Truth and Nothing But, episode 23, Killah Priest live podcast. This episode includes Dane Calloway. The link to the full videos in the description. Like and subscribe there. Peace.
It's gonna be more than just this. I can tell you that. This ain't gonna be the first or last time.
Hey.
'Cause I got a lot of stuff that I want to share. I got a lot of stuff that I want to put out to the masses, and there's a lot more stuff coming. Now that I'm back, I had to handle some things. My big chief, he transcended on with the ancestors, which is my grandfather. So now I'm big chief.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
And so I got a lot of responsibility, man. Just hanging out with the family, just catching up on everything, and they just letting me know, hey, the torch was passed.
Shut up.
And so it's a lot on my shoulders. Besides just helping my own people, I'm helping my family too. Dude. And so especially spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, and I'm up for the task. I'm up for the task. My grandfather prepared me very well. In fact, to get on a personal note slightly, he's the one that brought me into this realm. He straightened me out years ago. I came up in the house talking about some Africa stuff, and he said, and he straightened me out. Him and grandma, but grandma passed 10 days before my first son was born. But it was a lot of lessons to be learned, and I just sat and listened. I took notes, and eventually I'm gonna start putting some of this stuff out. I did give it to people that are exclusively on my channel or on my Patreon. They saw bits and pieces of my grandfather talking on camera. I did get a chance to record him speaking about certain things, but he did ask me before he left not to really go too far, because the last time I did that, I was on Facebook and people was calling his phone and other members of my family trolling and everything. So that's far, because I'm using my real name, so it's not like this is nothing made up. So you could pop that in and whoop, my whole family pop up. So I'm just gonna be skitty, as my grandfather say. I'm gonna be skitty with certain things that I share as far as my family members are concerned. But yeah, he brought me through this journey. I owe it all to him. I wouldn't have never known. Now, and the reason why is because during my grandfather's era, he was born in 1936. The era where he was raised in the 1930s, 1940s, at that time, our elders of the family members were being harassed, killed, hung. I could just simplify it just like that, for even claiming Indian. Okay. And, he saw certain things with my family members, like my great grandmother, which is his mother, and his aunt with my great aunt, my great great aunt. No, that's not my great aunt. That's my great aunt. But a couple of them were thrown in jail. One of them are not here, as far as them claiming Indian is concerned. It was just because of that. It wasn't nothing else. And at that time, my grandfather was explaining to me how it was. Like, that was prior to desegregation. Desegregation didn't come about until the 60s. So even though our people were living segregated from, the so-called white folks, my grandfather at that time, across the street from his mother's house, was a white family. He told me, and this what blew my mind. He told me at that time, he was, when he was a young boy, he was out there playing basketball and football with the young white boy that lived across the street from him. They ended up growing up together and becoming good friends, and I believe he ended up owning a bakery or something down the street, Florence, South Carolina. PD Indians. Shout out to my PD Indians. Catawba family. Shout out to my Ananya family. That is the great Aniyawea family. Let me put some respect on my father's name on that one. But yeah, so when people ask me, I'm going to definitely tell you Aniyawea first, based off of it being my direct line from my father. But Petey and Kataba, that's grandma and that's granddad. Okay, just in case you guys were wondering. Now, some of my family members are registered as far as them being with these particular tribes. Me personally, of course I could walk onto the reservation. I have my card, but the problem is I don't know. I don't like how it's being ran. Okay. And I don't like who it's being ran by. The majority of the head chiefs of these particular tribes, especially the civilized tribes, there's more than 5, by the way. A lot of those that are being federally recognized right now are considered civilized tribes, just in case you didn't know that. But they're being ran by folks that don't even live here, meaning they don't even live in the United States. They live outside of the United States, believe it or not. They're controlling it by remote control. Okay, and I put this on blast a couple of times. In fact, I took heat from a lot of those so-called Native American tribes for even putting that on blast. Nothing but pale faces, for real. Still to this very day, to be honest with you. But luckily, I have good lawyers. I have a couple of them. So I'm making sure that's not going to bite me in the tail for exposing the truth. And there's a few things on that note that I'm going to be announcing here shortly. I think we're waiting for the summertime or something like that in order for that to happen, because it's not a big deal to them, but it's a big deal to me to put it on blast of what's going on behind the scenes with how many of those foreigners are attacking me for bringing out the truth, for putting them on blast, because technically they're in our position. And I mean that literally. They are literally sitting there in our spot, and they're not supposed to be there. There's federally recognized tribes right now that will only accept certain census records. For example, one of them will state that they only accept, for example, an 1860 census record. And they wouldn't want you to, bring in any other record that, census record that came prior to that, indicating that you're full-blooded. They won't accept it. It's more than just those freedmen Indians that you hear about. It's millions of us that's full-blooded, and they still won't accept. So my main concern is not getting back with the tribe. My main concern is to get us cognizant of what happened to us, because we could force the changes together. I don't necessarily have to be called a leader in this sense, but I know I'm leading this information out. And to go back to the video that I asked you to play, that was 1 year ago. I know people gonna get on me like, you shared Young Pharaoh. Young Pharaoh is a good brother. I know he went through what he went through. I don't have no hate towards this brother. But that was 1 year ago. That's when he was in his right mindset. I understand what he's going through right now is totally different. But I just want you guys to know. And of course, everybody else that you saw, I spoke with personally. I could say it like that. That's not bragging. That's just to let you know that I'm speaking to more than you think. I'm speaking to a lot of people. A lot of people reaching out, and we get into their roots. And I don't mean Shaka Zulu. Plus, that story was plagiarized anyway. I already put that information out. And, I'm talking about our real indigenous roots here in Turtle Island, now known as America. But yeah, I owe this all to my grandfather. To get back to that, my grandfather taught me all of this. He straightened me out, brought me to the reservations. And my father brought me to Cherokee, North Carolina. I even lived there. Actually, before I moved out here, I was right on the outskirts of that because I didn't want to live in the, on the reservation or anything like that. But I was begging them to get on camera because there's people that's like, is a darker hue than me, like a darker hue. I'm talking about like KP's complexion. And I'm begging them to get on camera, and they are afraid. They are afraid because a lot of those people are afraid that certain things might get taken away from them. A lot of them are complaining because you would think that they're getting thousands of dollars monthly, but it's not the members. It's the so-called chiefs that's getting it. Sorry that I sound out of breath, guys. I've been ripping and running all day. So I'm catching my breath at the same time. I'm getting hype at the same time. You're going to have to excuse the transitions of how I'm going up and down. But yeah, I wanted to get them on camera. In fact, I got invited to a couple of, I'm not going to mention no names because I don't want to get them in trouble. But I got invited to a couple of places where I am going to be able to get a couple of people on camera. And they're going to start speaking up. And that was as of recently here. That was, well, I'm not going to say at the top of this year. That happened back in December, where I really got involved with a couple of people that have some pull inside of some major, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, clans, tribes, nations, families. It's all the same thing. Even though I don't like the term nation, because I understand now, based off of my grandfather's information and my grandmother's information, that the nations were being brought about in order to incorporate these particular families into becoming full-fledged corporations up under the government's rule. And that's not something I agree with, guys. Like, I'm totally against this government. I look at the government as our enemy because they're not holding up to their end of the bargain, which was multiple treaties that I do in fact have that have not been signed, by the way, stemming all the way back to the top of the 1700s. And I show, of course, my Patreons this, and I don't believe I got a chance to show the members of my YouTube channel that, but I will eventually. But I honestly need help with that because there's so many of them. I said to myself that I just wanted to create a website and throw all of them out there because I'm sure people are not going to get, have that type of money to pay for that to get all of those. But I had to put in multiple requests in order to retrieve all of them. I don't even know if I have all of them, but I know I have a ton of them. I'm talking about a lot of them, and none of them were signed. But and I'm talking about original copies, and that cost me a pretty penny. And and I said copies because I know they're not going to give me the original. They're still going to hold on to that by way that was the National Archives. Library of Congress is holding some of this stuff down too. You can track that depending on your individual family. I tell people this all the time. I do have a book, okay, that's going to give you basic instructions, step-by-step instructions on how to start your journey. I highly recommend that you get that done. That book is on Amazon right now as the bestseller, and it has 5 stars right now. It's called Tracing. I'm not making this up. Like, people could Amazon it right now. Tracing Your Family's Genealogical Background by Records by Dane Calloway. I have a second version or second edition of that book getting ready to release in the middle of this spring. Actually, I got a couple of books coming, but that's one of them. I tried to put that out last year, but that's when all that, I don't even want to say that terminology, but that's when the damn gimmick, you can read in between the lines, that's when the damn gimmick came about. Even the year before that, that's what actually paused me with traveling, because I was traveling, through many different states. I know certain people just saw me go to Virginia. They not watching my entire channel. If you look at my channel, I'm going to multiple different states, not just Virginia. But I stayed in Virginia heavy because a lot of this information I retrieved right now is being held by Virginia's historic Department of Historic Resources. So keep in mind, prior to these states being labeled as states, a lot of this landmass, especially on the East Coast, was originally called Virginia. I mean, I'm talking about that's before you heard places like Kentucky, Georgia, North Carolina. Well, even before North Carolina, South Carolina, because before they were separated, they were called the Carolinas. But even before that, like around the Boondocks area, they were, I mean, all the way up to New York. It was called, and I showed people this on the map. This was an old live stream of mine. I'll bring this back up. But I showed people the original map, that map that indicates that all of that landmass was called Virginia by way of the, what is the name of that? That was called the Congregation for Propagating the Gospel in Foreign Parts. The Congregation for Propagating the Gospel in Foreign Parts. Okay? These were the so-called Englishmen that were sent over here to teach us their gospel in order to manipulate our mindsets into allowing them here and allowing us to have open minds and open hearts. Now, a lot of our members, or a lot of our people, our very own indigenous people, a lot of our Niji people didn't agree with that. So what they did was they stopped sending over adults. They started sending they started sending children by the hundreds. That's the reason why I added an S, as I was getting ready to say both at the same time. But they started sending children, and this is by way of their own records. Virginia Statutes at Large, that is called the Virginia Company of London. The Virginia Company of London. That's why a lot of that landmass was called Virginia, from top to bottom on the East Coast. Now, when we speak of people on this side, on the East Coast, we're going to call them the East Woodland Indians. Now, a lot of people may be unfamiliar with that, but if you get to, some terminologies that you may have heard of, like some Algonquin speaking people, that's when you're going to notice how many sections of that dialect was broken off into smaller sections. Like, this is where you got some of the Cherokee. A lot of the Cherokee was heavily influenced by the Algonquin speaking people. In fact, many of the tribes were, but of course, I'm not here to speak about other people's tribes. I can only speak for mine, which will now be considered the Eastern Band Cherokee. And especially on my father's side. Now, my father's very proud of it, and eventually I'm going to have him on camera. I just need him to calm down his his radicalness. I consider it radical, but my father's very intelligent and will spit this off like it's nothing, similar to me. But I just need him to calm down on that and straighten himself out. Then I'm going to get him on camera, as long as I don't have no coffee in front of him when he get all hyped up. But my father's going to be breaking down a lot of history of what happened in the North Carolina. I did plan on my grandfather going over South Carolina, but of course he's gone now, so I'm going to have to do South Carolina, probably along with my mother. So I'm going to be getting more of my family members involved here this year and next year, especially now that a lot of these restrictions are being lifted, going to these places, putting a lot of things that you haven't seen or probably went past, or I'm just going to put it on camera. And along with an explanation of what happened with the proof, the evidence as well. Because once again, I say this multiple times, a lot of the stuff was documented. It's just that our people didn't have any interest in learning what this stuff was about, because of course they took our attention away from America and put it right on Africa. To be exact, they put it on Egypt too. And that's all the way in North Africa. So we weren't even taught things on West Africa. I have I know my wife gonna get on me if I announce that, but I do have a book talking about that. I'm not gonna give the name or nothing like that. She gonna get on me. And it should, I think that's coming. That's the first book where I'm talking about what happened with the transatlantic slave trade. I guess I could go ahead and say that part at least.
Yeah.
And the real message behind it, the real documents behind it, when you probably can't Google. I'm going to enlist all of what I have inside of my book, just like how I did Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman. And, it's people going to have to take it or leave it, but I'm going to tell you what's going on. Like, basically off of my research and what I found and what I discovered, I don't have a master teacher. I'm not led by unless you want to consider my grandfather my master teacher, I'm not led by, any congregation, any organization, or institution or anything like that of that nature. I'm not a Mason. I'm not a Freemason. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I'm Dane Calloway. I'm Dane Calloway, and I'm just here to make you think. I don't want anybody to take what I'm stating as if I'm trying to go against my people. No, I'm going against the information that was presented to our people to make it seem as if it was our history when it wasn't. It has no proof to stand on. And this is the reason why you don't see people with larger platforms come at me. They may say things here and there and call me outside of my name, but they won't take my information and try to debunk it because they know that I'm presenting records.